Absolute Superman issue 2, Jason Aaron writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art. So, we left off last time. Lois is part of this group of the Peacemakers.
The Lazarus.
The Lazarus, yes. And she's handcuffed herself with this fancy, super powered titanium handcuff to Clark, who. Yeah, there was a weird thing here actually, where I wasn't sure what they were doing, but like he kept calling them chuffs, and I thought, wait, is this a spelling of cuffs that I'm unfamiliar with? And I eventually saw the AI in his suit said it's cuffs, Cal,
Yes.
it's cuffs, and I'm like, oh, thank you for addressing that, because I thought I was losing my goddamn mind. Anyway, so
you thought he was just saying it differently, so it was like they had put a phonetic there to make it sound like he was mispronouncing.
Or maybe just that this was an accepted alternate spelling or something of cuffs with like a hard ch or something. But I appreciated it finally being addressed after a few pages. So Lois is like tied to Superman, and he has to fight off whatever, the soldiers coming for him. And then eventually when they all fire him, there's a lot of chaos, helicopters falling out the sky and whatnot. I guess the big thing here is what they've done here with the cape and how that's different.
It's so what they do here is he keeps calling it dust, right? He's like, the dust will protect you. And so it's almost like a nanoform kind of thing. It's almost like a cloud that he can kind of control and make like a barrier, so he uses it to block these weapons that Lazarus is shooting at him and Lois, even though she tells him to stop. Very, very curious, because then we also find out it's Sunstone technology from Krypton. Then we find out from Soul, and then in the backstory we get on Krypton later in the book, it gets more into detail. One of the running jokes throughout this is, as Lois and Cal are handcuffed together, so he has this energy of Soul of his suit wrap around, and it's trying to tinker with the cuffs to get them off. But the cuffs keep changing. It's this different kind of metal. So I was thinking kind of how T-1000 is. And as the suit's trying to get them uncuffed, Lois keeps shooting him with her energy weapon. And at a point, Cal goes, "Will you please stop that?" And it kept making me laugh every time she shot him. Like, it was very, not quite a buddy cop scenario, but it was up there. Very, very kind of Looney Tunes kind of thing. And automatically, Aaron gets this dynamic between Lois and Clark where it's vaguely familiar, but it's not what we're used to. There's definitely a back and forth between them as they're doing this. So I appreciated that. Back to the land of the living.
Yeah, I think the cape thing is interesting, especially since visually it is kind of like a cloud at times, but it does sort of solidify at moments and looks more like a cape. Yep. It's they already sort of shook up the the typical Superman thing with having this voice coming from the suit, so it already feels wildly different. But the cape especially feels like a completely flip on what we're normally used to. It feels a lot more sci-fi and a lot more
a lot more alien.
A lot more alien, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because it's this amorphous thing that's constantly changing, and there's this really fun panel where he's carrying Lois after, when was it? They get shot out of the sky by the tanks, and they land in front of this old church, and he's walking forward into the foreground carrying her. And just the way that the cape comes up, it looks very, very traditionally Superman, right? But yeah, a lot of fun imagery that can happen with this thing.
Yeah, a lot of the art here is quite good. The cape feels so different to what we normally used to see with Superman. The idea that it's like Lois, when she's dragged up into the sky when he takes off, like she's kind of like almost like just kind of like engulfed with it. Like she's like kind of like covered in this red mist almost that's around her. But then there's times though when it kind of like when the missiles are coming after them and the cape kind of naturally forms around them in like a protective. It looks more like a cape at this point, even though it's still a little bit like particle looking. but it does sort of come around like a cape would if you were sort of using it to shield yourself. But it also covers Lois, so there's some really fun little touches in the art here. And like you said, yeah, after he lands, after getting knocked down, and he's carrying Lois, it looks probably the most traditional cape like it's looked in the entire issue at that point. So I think visually, if nothing else, it's really playing with what we're used to seeing with Superman, and it stuck out quite a bit.
And we get that cool moment too after, so they keep pursuing and come out that the tanks are hella tanks. So, they have rotors and they come up and they start pursuing Lois and Cal. And, of course it starts blowing up this little town he landed in, and there's people. So he does the Superman thing of going in to save them. And he comes out carrying these people with Lois, right? Because they're still handcuffed together. And it's, the cape is cradling these people. So it's not just him holding them. The cape also has, has that kind of form. And it's another, it's a new kind of Superman imagery, but it's still playing on the traditional.
Yeah, there's some action in here that you skipped over, where he picks up a car and throws it at the helicopter. So there's more sort of big effects and action as that goes down. And yeah, like this Lazarus, don't seem to care about the collateral damage. At one point, like they even say, "Oh, we don't even care if we hit Lois. We don't care that our agent's there. Just fire everything we've got at him." That's very much their attitude. And what's interesting is we get towards the end, right around that imagery of when there's innocent civilians in danger here, and he goes to rescue them, and even Lois is carrying a kid as they're walking out of the fire.
Yeah.
When that happens, the narration, which is clearly a piece of writing, or it turns out to be her like report to her superiors afterwards, but like that starts to come in, and she starts describing them. A couple things stick out to me is one, she does confirm that it's not all just the suit that's doing stuff, that he himself does seem to be enhanced in some way. Now, how much of like what he's doing is physically Superman here, and how much of it is the suit being some sort of fancy super suit, I suspect that's something we're going to define as time goes on, and we'll understand better what's the suit doing and what, because it feels like the cape is probably more to do with the suit or its own thing, as opposed to he's controlling it with his mind, or it's coming from his body. I don't expect that, just based on what they've shown here. But yeah, he probably is stronger. He probably is whatever. My question is here though, did he fly in this issue? Because obviously he takes off, but when Lois is talking about it after, she refers to it as a long jump. So I'm not sure yet if we've confirmed that he can fly. Which
is a single bound, right? Playing with the Superman.
Yeah, it's the classic leap in a single bound stuff,
and stuff. So yeah, so maybe he doesn't. So maybe he can fly, right, through the use of the cape and the energy. But here he expelled so much, because before this all started, he was still charging.
I mean, I think you're even making it too complicated. I think it might be as simple as he can't fly yet. It's something that's going to happen during the course of the story, is he'll like unlock that power or realize that he can do it. I see that as a big moment they can maybe play with, is the moment that he realizes he can actually just fly.
Because we do also get the cold breath, the frost breath here at the end as well. So we do know that there is some of the typical Kryptonian physiology at play here.
Yeah, we get the cold breath, and it looks like he's got a little bit of heat vision as well. Or at the very least, it's more like the capes get into his eye, now that I'm looking at it properly. But yeah, so basically Lois has a choice here where she's going to take out her weapon and shoot him again after he's like saved all these people, and she ends up deciding not to, and she like puts her gun back down, and he actually says thank you. So it's kind of a moment where she actually says you're welcome for one, but it feels like, at the end of this scene, like it's not just the cop and like perpetrator relationship anymore. At the very least, she's learned to respect him a little bit. But he does kind of drop a couple of things that gets her thinking. Like, for example, he refers to like this planet at one point, which gets her asking about, wait, what's your planet then? Is this not your planet? And just as he's about to maybe go into it a little bit more at the end, the cape is able to release the cuffs, and so he takes off again. Is he flying? Is he just jumping away? We don't really know yet, but I did like that panel though, both of him taking off, but also at the bottom of her just looking up as the helicopters are coming in behind her, because this is her world. She's from this world with this team, and clearly the seeds have already been planted that she's going to start sympathizing with Superman and not be, you know, believing in what the company motto is or whatever anymore. And yeah, on you go.
Well, because that's her report, right? So that's what I like that Erin does here, is that we get introduced to Lois as the writer here, in that that she starts writing her report through this Lazarus AI, right? She's calling it the Brainiac. And this is how we're getting her point of view as this action sequence is unfurling. And so, yeah, she already gets it where she's starting to kind of doubt, not necessarily the mission, but like there is something more to him, right? That she saw there was other things, that he was taking care not to hurt random people and stuff. You know, so he's not maybe as much of a threat as they thought he was before.
Well, you say they, but it's not they. It's just her, because
it's her,
because she specifically says, you know, she says certain things, and then the Brainiac AI that she's like sort of reporting into kind of reads what she says incorrectly, and sort of says, because he's like, oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a threat is he? And she sort of describes, you know, something, and it's clearly not meant to make him sound intimidating. And the Brainiac AI just goes, "Oh, he's an 8. Noted." It's like, that's not what I said. I did not say he's an 8 level threat. So she kind of like decides to go and actually write a traditional report, and it makes a big deal here that she hates writing reports. But at the end of writing this, she actually says she feels good, and it's almost like she's never written a news article before. And this is kind of like the birth of that part of her character in a weird way, where she appreciated like writing the truth, and I think especially this idea that there's an AI, whether or not it's actually an AI or it's, you know, whatever, but like messing things up and misinterpreting things. The idea of like going back to the traditional way of writing to get the truth out, and the idea that here it's not so much about this lifelong attempts to be a journalist and that being something that's in her, but more that at a certain point she has this realization that just writing the truth and trying to expose what the reality is something that appeals to her, as opposed to it being sort of tied to just a job that she always wanted in the first place. This is kind of like, it's being born out of the situation she's in rather than just a traditional Lois Lane story. So it's yeah, I mean, this was good stuff again. It was kind of, I mean, most of it's action, but it's really good action because it's all the first interactions between Superman and Lois. It shows him try to save her, but it kept it interesting, not just because the art was great and not just because it was doing really interesting things with the pacing and sequencing, but just for the fact that so much of it was new stuff. It's like, okay, what is this cape? How does it work? And we get a new flavor of it, like with each passing page of, this is how it functions, this is how it can be used. And there's still questions to be asked. Yeah, the Sunstone thing's brought up, and we know that's technology from Krypton, or a resource from Krypton at the very least. But yeah, and we get a bit more of the flashbacks, a little bit at the start, but a lot at the end. With basically Clark gets into trouble because he actually tried to interpret history on his own rather than just taking from the textbooks, and his teacher wasn't particularly fond of that.
And I liked how that paralleled Lois, right? Questioning the Brainiac AI there at the end, is that they seem to be having the same kind of reaction to this thing. And it also kind of parallels the fate of Krypton with maybe the fate of Earth, right? If things keep going that way with Brainiac and whatever. So I did like that. And it also shows that Clark already has this, well, keep saying Clark, we don't know about the Kents, right? But Cal, we see that he does have his parents' spirit.
Yeah, we right now legitimately do not know what age Clark is when he gets to Earth. We do not know. He could have he might have aged in the journey. Like, so he could have been like 20 by the time he arrived on Earth in this universe. Yeah. We don't know.
Because it says at the beginning, Krypton, the Red Land, 6 years ago. So is that 6 years to Clark? Is that 6 years of Krypton? Is that 6 Earth years? Like, we don't know. But for the sake of this part of the story, it was 6 years, you know.
And that'll just be 6 Earth years then. So that would to me says that he's about 18 in the present day story, and he's probably about 12.
He seems he's about middle school age here.
Yeah, so that to me says that he's about 12 in the flashbacks, and he's about 18 or so in the present day stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're overthinking it, but starting to question if it's Kryptonian years.
Well, I'm just saying because of the flashback and whatnot, right?
Well, yeah, but that information is not in universe. That information is something that the writer's telling us so that we can understand
that's correct. Definitely overthinking. But yeah, no, just it drives home the point that he's like his parents, right? He's his parents' son. Is that they were constantly questioning things. Now he's questioning, right? And yeah, so I liked all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and the flashbacks at the end are of his parents basically sprucing up Lara's old design for a ship to leave Krypton. And at this point, they're not saying, "Hey, we're just going to build a little ship for a kid and like get him out of here." They're hoping to try and evacuate more, if not everyone, if they can convince everyone what's going on. But as we established in the first issue, though, they're kind of like the working class. Like, you're unimportant because we've decided genetically, because of your house and your symbol, you're not one of the science leagues, so you don't get listened to. So they're like, Jor-El's being kind of hopeful. Oh, we'll convince them, we'll talk to them, and it's like, yeah, but we're from the Redlands, we're not important, they're not going to listen to us. And because obviously it's Krypton, we know they're not going to listen to them. that's almost a foregone conclusion to us as the audience. But at least at this point, though, their plan is to try and save more than just their son. Obviously, well, I was going to say obviously we expect that it will just be him, but who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. What if Jor-El and Lara get in a ship with him, but they die on the way to Earth or something? Like, we don't know how they've changed things here.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that too, because we have gotten differences in Batman and Wonder Woman in the Absolute Universe, but there's a thing here where he talks about where Lois talks about like he's someone that feels like where's it at? About being a boy. He's very much still a boy, one who hasn't fully deciphered who he is, and talks about like he looks like he's looking for like role models, kind of. Not necessarily role models, but I'm trying to find it here. But he still reminds me of a lost child, a son without a home, a deep mistrust of authority. So it definitely feels like not necessarily he's an orphan, but he's someone that is, not being guided by parents. So yeah, maybe they did get off planet, but they didn't survive the trip, right? So that would just change things differently enough. But oh yeah, it definitely made me think with the changes that have happened in the other two books. Like, oh, maybe he does. Maybe he's trying to get back to Lara and Jor-El, right? But I'm not too certain after reading that part.
Yeah, no, I just, like, we don't know what they've changed, and part of me is even like, wait, is Krypton even gone? Did they say that in the first issue? I'm assuming they did, but now I'm questioning it and going... I'm
questioning it too, because it's like, well, we know Krypton could be a disaster, but we just know that he got off. We know that Kal is here. Right?
Yeah, I mean, what if he just left Krypton because, like, the powers that be killed his parents or something like that, and he just fled?
And he's a refugee in that way, and now he's also on the run from Krypton, and he doesn't want them to find Earth, right? Because now this is just another place for them to come and mess up.
Yeah, he's not a refugee from a world that's dead. He's a refugee potentially from a world that like mistreats him, or what is going to come after him. That's hostile.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be a change enough. And that's also with what we know from the All In book, right, is that Darkseid's trying to create this universe without hope. And what would be more, stripping from hope than that story of Superman that wants to do right by the sins of Krypton. But what if the sins of Krypton aren't what they used to be, right? What if they're like this almost colonial power, kind of like an Invincible, right? How they twisted that, and he's kind of on the run. He's almost like a refugee from a hostile, country type deal.
Yeah, and for the record, like, I'm not suggesting that I'm seeing hints of this specifically. I'm just I'm realizing how open it actually is for, like, the fact that we're getting this flashback story building up to how the Krypton stuff is going to, like, play out in this universe is making me think that there's going to be something very different about it by the time we actually get to why he's on the ship and why he leaves the planet. Whether that's because Krypton doesn't actually explode, whether that's because his parents don't die on Krypton and come with them and somehow die somewhere else or something. but I'm expecting something big and meaningful to be different. I mean, the fact that Clark's like alive is like a 12-year-old on Krypton's already very different, obviously. But I'm kind of expecting, like, because we're devoting so much time to building up to the actual, end of the planet, or the end of, like, at least his time on the planet, I'm expecting something else to kind of like be revealed later on in this flashback story. But as far as a journey of discovery goes, it's been a very exciting book so far, even just 2 issues in. I think both issues have done a good job at playing with new mechanics and new things. This first sort of meeting between Superman and Lois being this kind of hostile relationship, but just by the end of it, her seeing him going out of his way to save people and being somewhat inspired by his naivete, as she puts, this idea that he's still not quite fully grown up, but he's trying to like figure out who he is. That's interesting to me. So, all Absolute books had good second issues. Here we are.
I also like there's this page at the end where it's after the flashback to Krypton, and it picks up where Lois is writing.
There's a couple of pages at the end. Yeah, there's one that's just like her saying, "Oh, that felt good to write that," and she sees the written by Lois Lane on the report. It's not even an article; it's just a report. But there's just a little tag at the end where these peacemakers actually go out of their way to kill the civilians that
he helped.
Were saved by Superman. Yeah, so
because peace has a price, and that went dark. That went from, again, where Lois is writing, she's kind of becoming the Lois that we're familiar with, and Clark's crossing from Brazil into Venezuela, right? And there's a curious thing here where it says Lazarus means death, join the Omega Men. So there's a something, right, where it's like, I know the Omega Men are something different, but knowing that Darkseid has a role in All In the Absolute Universe, that was curious. But that peace has a price, right? That he's on his way out. He thought he's done well. He's saved these people from this Lazarus thing, and they show up and wipe him out anyways. So it's almost like it was all for nothing. And again, very, very kind of dark ending on an otherwise, it was on the upswing.
Yeah, it's a darker universe for sure. And these characters at the end, it's just like, we're going to punish these people because we have to show them that. I mean, obviously, they keep saying peace has a price, but more specifically, they feel butthurt, and they're going out of their way to do this out of spite almost. So. Yeah, it does say next time, last days of Krypton, so maybe we'll get our answers as to what's different about the Krypton stuff. More so next time.
So this one, I came into this because it's Jason Aaron, like a lot more excited than some of the other ones. And so far through 2 issues, this is kind of what I expected the Absolute Universe to be, with just enough changes, but Aaron seems to be taking the core of Superman as this kind of man of the people, kind of traditionally what he used to be back in like the 30s. And he's fleshing him out that way. And I wasn't expecting that aspect, right? I was expecting a different kind of Superman, a kind of more darker, sci-fi driven Superman, but him becoming this, again, man of the people, traveling, from place to place where they need help, the kind of rogue hero, I really like.
Yeah, and because it's not so much that he's made Superman darker, he's just made the world that Superman's in a bit darker. Yeah. But he's also made Superman a little bit more lost, because I don't think he has the Kents. Like, if I was to guess right now, I would say he's not had Martha and Jonathan Kent. Maybe he'll meet them later. Maybe that'll be something that happens down the line. Don't forget,
in the first issue, we did get that quick cutaway to the Kent house, and it had a big hole in the roof.
That's right. So, yeah. But maybe him landing killed them. Like he landed in the house and they died.
But this is also a older Clark, right? That when he arrives, he's already going to be older. So what would he have learned anyways? And like, what if this is on his conscience? What if his arrival here hurting people, is still weighing on him? That's why he's kind of going around trying to help things.
There's a guilt quality to it. First and foremost, perhaps. Yeah.
But so far it's just really good stuff. And then Sandoval's art is it like, again, I keep saying dark, but it's not dark. It plays with these shadows, because the cape and stuff is dark red, right? But then it's offset by whatever that energy that's coming off of him is, off of the suit, it almost looks like it's like lava hands, for lack of a better term, right? It's playing with that almost as a light source. So anywhere you see the cape and that energy projection, it seems to lighten up everything around it. So again, it's almost Superman bringing light into a dark realm, and just everything with the colors and the art, it's really hitting.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning as well, you can see it because he kind of gets naked at one point when the cape's kind of like fixing him up or charging him or whatever it is. You can actually see that the suit forms around him out of this sort of like sun energy. You can sort of see it going up his arm as if it's like nanobots are building it. So his suit is very different from what traditional Superman's outfit is. So no. Really interesting discovery process so far.
Yeah.
On this one. It's been very compelling to read up until this point. Matt, what are you giving Absolute Superman issue 2?
I'm gonna give this a 9.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that much. I think I might just bump it down slightly to 8.5, just because I think the first issue was just that bit tighter in its structure. But I mean, this was very thrilling to read, and the first steps of the Superman and Lois relationship were well done. But for the most part, though, it was really the excitement of seeing like how the cape functions and all the action that comes with that, with being shot out of the sky and the throwing of the cars and whatnot. So, really, really solid stuff.